I haven't heard.
7:02.
7:02, do you have 7:02?
Let's do roll call. I hope that, well, hopefully the clock on the wall is correct, because that's what I'm going by.
It is.
Yes.
Well, it agrees with Verizon time,
Okay.
for what that's worth.
Works for me.
Let's have the roll call.
Director Reddick,
Here.
Director Blanchard,
Yeah.
Director Dye.
Here.
Director Slater Carter,
Present.
Director Harvey, I'm sorry, Director Roback,
Here.
and Director Harvey not here yet.
Right, and Director Harvey will not be here. Public comment, oral communication. I see no speaker slips, but if somebody wants to raise your hand and wave wildly and then fill one out, that's fine too. All right, seeing none, we will go to consent agenda. Oh, and for the record, this is April 22nd, 2019. Approved minutes of March 25th, regular board meeting, approved disbursements for April 8th and April 22nd, received revenue and expense report for period ending March 31. Receive OPED actuarial valuation report as of July 1, 2018, as required by Government Accounting Standards Board, affectionately known as GASB, Standard 57. And cancel the May 27 and July 8, 2019 regular board meetings due to their proximity to federal holidays.
I'd like to make a minor correction to the minutes.
Okay,
Just in the top of page 6, the AG report, I would just like to say Director Dye requested that the comments she received from her staff, and I would like that to say from GCSD staff.
very good.
They're really not my staff.
Got it.
1-4.
Yes.
So assuming that that change will be made, do we have a motion to,
Wait,
do we have
Right,
anyone
no.
else who wants any changes?
actually, I have another change. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I'm looking down at the page. On item 4, regular business, on the MOU, I would like to add the phrase, following discussion. Director Dye stated she had questions regarding the memorandum of understanding. Following discussion, since all of the other directors indicated that they were prepared to approve the MOU, Director Dye agreed to abstain. Because that's what happened.
So you want to add that?
Yes.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Okay.
I don't have a problem, does,
Could
but,
I recommend that we pull the minutes separately since I was not at that meeting?
okay. So we will be, does anybody else have anything they want pulled? Okay, so we will be approving the disbursements, receive the revenue and expense report, receive the OPEB actuarial valuation, and cancel the meetings in one motion. Do we have a motion?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Now we will go back to the, approve the minutes of March 25th, regular board meeting. Why don't we put voting on those off, because, so that we can make sure that the changes,
Okay.
changing one word is good, but a longer sentence, I think it's better to do it correct.
Yeah, we'll bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Okay. We are now at regular business and authorize the presentation on blower replacement project. And we have 2 representatives from PG&E here.
Yes.
And are we going to be having
A
a
presentation, yes.
presentation?
So
Okay,
you
I'm
might
going
wanna
to move.
scoot, yes. And so I wanted to just introduce, from PG&E, Shannon Bell. So if you wanna, did you wanna come up and say anything? I will. And then I also have Brian Hackett from KW Engineering. So they'll be available and make some comments, and then we'll also have a presentation.
So my name is Shannon Bell. I'm the account manager. That has been
We're mirror image.
There we go. Okay, there we go. It's going.
there we go. Yeah. So I have recently been assigned to your account as your customer relationship manager. What that means is that I help you with anything and everything related to PG&E, whether it's energy efficiency opportunities like this, which is actually my passion and what I love to do any and every day, but also billing, outages, anything that says, oh my gosh, we need to call PG&E. There's a real life person. I am that person. So in regards to the project that we're talking about today, KW Engineering has done all of the analysis for you. So Brian's going to talk to that, and then I have some handouts about the on-bill financing portion of it, which we'll get into on the tail end. So I'm going to hand it out while he's chit-chatting. Okay.
Thank you, Shannon. Good evening, everyone. My name is Brian Hackett. I'm a senior mechanical engineer at KW Engineering. KW Engineering is an engineering consulting firm based in Oakland, California. We specialize in energy efficiency. And I'll go through my role in this project. So we'll cover project background, comparison of technologies between aeration blowers, and then go into discuss at a high level the custom calculation process. Project background on this project. PG&E field engineer came out to your facility and identified potential energy efficiency retrofit projects. One of the projects was that the existing aeration blowers have limited turn down capability, which leads to a situation of over aeration and wasting energy. The list of energy efficiency projects was brought to plant staff, and from the list, staff selected the aeration blowers for further evaluation. So this further evaluation is paid for by PG&E, by the ratepayers, so you're paying into these funds. So this is a free service to the district. And then PG&E selected KW Engineering to perform the further investigation and to prepare the energy saving calculations and estimates. So the picture of the blower on the side is not one from this facility, but from actually another wastewater treatment plant. But just wanted to talk very quickly about the existing blowers. They are multi-stage centrifugal blowers that have been retrofitted with variable frequency drives. Within the industry, they're considered standard efficiency as far as their conversion of mechanical power into compressing air. They inherently have a limited turn-down capability, which means that from maximum airflow to minimum airflow, it's very narrow range. Proposed blowers are called high-speed turbo blowers. High speed, they spin at about 20 times faster than centrifugal blowers. They are a higher efficiency. They are inherently variable speed, and this leads to a very wide turn-down range. And this example is just an example, but it's typical for this type of technology. What this means is this type of technology gives the plant the opportunity to operate at lower airflow rates when there's less influent coming into the plant, there's less wastewater to treat, and that saves energy. The blowers are also higher efficiency in the sense they use less energy at lower airflow rates, whereas the existing technology has relatively poor part load performance. So this is what we're comparing. It's not really a manufacturer versus manufacturer, it's just a technology comparison. So if we go to the next slide. What does this process look like? Well, it started off with the PG&E engineer identifying the project and discussing that with plant staff and submitting an application, which was done with your account manager. So then PG&E assigns the project to a consulting firm, in this case KW Engineering, and we develop a baseline monitoring plan. Develop what data we need to have so that we can perform or estimate, give you accurate estimate of future performance of the baseline equipment and the proposed equipment and the energy savings that will result. Those calculations are developed and then they're reviewed by another party, independent of PG&E and independent of me, to verify the savings, or at least the methodology and the potential savings. And then once that is done, it's brought to PG&E and PG&E sends that to you and it's approved.
It is approved.
And I believe that means that the initial estimate of incentive is reserved at that time. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay. So that's where we're at right now. We've basically gone up to the last step of the pre-installation stage. Where we're going,
Excuse me, what does that mean? The initial estimate of savings is reserved? Is that what
the incentive.
the incentive?
The
Incentive. So every customized project. So I'm gonna back up just a couple steps and make some basic PG&E for energy efficiency. I'm a visual, so the hands will come out. So every month, every customer, whether it's a business customer or a residential customer, pays into a PPP charge, a public purpose programs charge. And so those monies go to your PG&E bill and then they go to the CPUC. And the CPUC then takes that money and they put those funds into different programs. One of those programs is CARE, low income. Okay, so that some of that money goes there. Small portion. The bigger portion of it though goes to energy efficiency. So it's ratepayer dollars. So the oversight is quite strong. So by going to the CPC, it goes into my deemed bucket. Basically, that's the Best Buy model, whereas you do a project and you give me a like light bulbs. Okay, so we did the lighting before, right? You look in the deemed catalog and you find the right product number and you buy that product and you give me a paid invoice and then we give you a rebate check. So the rebate program is one of them. The other is customize. That's what we're following here. We'll customize what there's the apply before you buy, which is everything that we've done. You apply, we approve it, we say that's a good project, and then we baseline it, and that's what Brian has done. And he's baselined it, and he said this is what the savings is going to be if you do this project. And then we calculate what that savings is, and we put an incentive dollar towards it. It's 12 cents per kWh, and $150. Thank you for keeping me honest. $150 per kW saved. So we calculate all of that. I'm going to have those numbers there for you in a second, and we reserve it. Okay. And then once
So it's reserve funding.
it's
for this
reserve funding, but
project.
it's yours. So and you have it for up to a year after it's been reserved.
Okay.
Then you get the approval. I think that's where we're going next.
Yeah.
Is you get the approval, which is what we've been granted to move forward.
So can you tell me how you define the baseline?
That's a very good question. So for this plan, for any process, we try to identify what are the inputs, and the major input for a wastewater treatment facility is the influent volume and then the organic content or concentration. So that's the BOD loading. And we got that data from Kishin, from the SCADA plant, or from the SCADA system, and we create a model, basically based on average monthly flows and average concentration of the organic material. And then we look at how much oxygen it actually requires to oxidize, do the biological treatment. And so that's our baseline. We create a baseline and a model that incorporates all of these things. So that in the post, if for some reason you had new customers or a new subdivision came online and your influent increased on a monthly basis, we could adjust the model. And that's why we're truing up in the post to see if there has been any changes to what we assumed were our inputs. And so then we can adjust the energy savings and also the incentive.
Okay, great, thanks.
So the baseline is based on our current equipment.
Correct.
Current equipment and 12 months of actual operating data. And there was, so there was monitoring that went on. I installed data loggers to capture other inputs that weren't captured in the plant SCADA system, but that will be repeated in the post installation again. And so we go through the same process, but because we've already gone through the process once, it goes faster. And the technical review will be done again by an outside firm, and then it goes to PG&E and to you guys, and decide to move forward, and the incentive is paid out.
So right now we're at the approvals space. So did you have another setup for this? No, okay,
That's basically
good.
my technical presentation. If you have questions about the technical portion, I'd love to answer them for you.
So at the approval stage, we then take the technical engineering piece of it, and we have asked that your organization asked if you could participate in the on-bill financing program, which is a great program. So if we want to jump to the next one, I can run through that.
Sorry.
So can I?
Absolutely, I like conversation. Go.
If we do this, we will save money on an ongoing basis, but there will be an initial investment, which will be incentivized by dollars from PG&E.
Right, and I'm gonna show you exactly what those numbers are gonna be, because it's a very exciting day for me. So I actually got numbers. So, but first I'm gonna talk about what the on-bill financing program is. So I gave you a handy dandy flyer here, because as I mentioned before, I'm more of a visual. So basically, pretty much took the information off of this because it's small, and then put it into the other handout, which is basically just breaking down what the on-bill financing program is. So this is a program that is internal to PG&E. Actually, all 3 IOUs in the state of California do it. So it's PG&E, that's investor-owned utilities. PG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric, and Southern California Gas. So this is something that is offered throughout the state, but it's an energy efficiency retrofit loan program. So we have 2 different pieces of it. One, it's all under the umbrella of on-bill financing, but there is a portion of on-bill financing with rebates and on-bill financing without rebates. Because not everything has a rebate, but a lot of things have energy savings. So that was noticed, and and it wants to be captured. And the product itself, meaning the on-bill financing product, is a great tool. And as you guys have utilized it before in the past, it was a little easier to get through the process for you guys. It is a time-consuming process, so thank you to Kishan for helping push it through. But we today got all of the numbers to help it make sense for you. So if you want to pop through to the next one. So the benefits for business customer, it's a flat financing program from $5,000, and about 3 weeks ago they just upped the cap to $250,000 after incentives. So and they also extended the loan terms. So it used to be only $100,000, and it used to only be 5 years. So it was a very exciting day 3 weeks ago when they said now it's $250,000 and it's 10 years. So due to the popularity of the program, it is a zero interest loan on your PG&E bill. So again, back to the visuals with the hands. Sorry, it's just kind of the best way. Here's your PG&E bill, right? You've been paying this, you're just trucking along, and hopefully not too many fluctuations, right? And then you put in your project, and then here's your new PG&E bill, right down here. Well, the loan payment for the project is this delta. So you're actually not out of pocket for the part that's being financed. Now, this project that we've talked about is above the cap, which you have other opportunities for that part of it, but for the portion that we are financing, you are not physically writing a check to the vendor who's putting in, we are doing that. Or we're writing it to you and you're giving it to them. However you want that to work, that's up to you.
We're paying the delta.
So the delta's just paid for the savings that you're seeing. So the savings is paying back the loan. And if we pop through to the next one, I'm going to actually show you a visual on that. So as you'll see, the loan repayment is based on projected energy savings. That's why what Brian does is so important, because he did all that baseline, so he's showing what your savings is going to be, so we could develop what the loan would be. So if you want to go ahead, pop through. So here's an example. That's an easy one. So if your project cost is $10,000, and we're on the orange side there, and if you had the rebate of $2,500, your loan amount would be $75, because the buy down from the rebate, the estimated savings from the retrofit would be $300. So then the monthly loan installment would be $300, and that's just automatically done on the bill. There's no writing a check. It's just paid for by the loan savings. Okay.
So for our budget, you wouldn't see any difference.
Okay.
That's the benefit of it, and yet we're paying off the loan because there's no interest.
0%. So, okay, next one. So, specifics for here. So,
Actually, could we go back real quick to
Sure.
the previous one? So on the bottom, the thing to notice is, in this particular example, is the payoff is 25 months. But the assumption is the value of that project is gonna go beyond 25 months.
oh,
So
yes, sorry.
once you get past that point, it's savings.
More savings.
So,
Yes.
back to my visual. So, here's your delta that you're paying back, right? And here's your PG&E bill, and then once you've paid it off, then you get the savings. There
Yes.
we go. Sorry.
That's okay.
Somehow I have to get that on a piece of paper. I don't know.
Right.
But I'm just,
So just for the board
Okay,
that might
got
not be used to that,
Yeah.
and for the public, so it may take us, in this particular example, 2 years to pay it off, but that project may be good for 10 years. So then you would see those savings over that longer period of time. And for the 25 months, no interest.
correct. So, specific to Sam. Okay, so you had a previous project, the lighting project, which we're all reaping the benefits and rewards of. So that one is still on the books and it's being paid off through this program, and then, so your balance on that is $101,000 and some change. So as I mentioned, the maximum premise amount is $250,000. So we have the delta of that, which is we have $148,000 to play with. Oh, and some change. So your original project cost, I'm gonna come up to this here because I'm a pointer too. So your original project costs were $410,000, and that's of course just an estimate that you got from your vendor, and you know, as you come out. So the nice thing about this program, it's approved. I literally brought the paperwork tonight. So and so you guys review and do all what you need to do. If you're up or down or whatever, it doesn't matter. We don't have to like, oh, we changed this or we changed that. We do that at the end because you've been approved for the 100 and for this part right here. Okay? So this is in your packets. There's a little piece here on the end that was not added to the packet. I missed it actually when printing. So you could add that if you want on the paper copies that I gave you. But it does tell you what your original KWH savings will be, and then what your monthly loan payment would be. And then this is the buy down. So this is the delta from here to here. And then your simple payback in years, and the term, and then the important piece, I think for everybody here, is the annual cost savings, and then what your CO2 savings are. So, yep.
Sounds great.
Any questions about that part? This was the exciting piece that we got today. Like, I have a meeting, let's get this. So, the next step in the process is you review the documents that I brought, coming up here, and then you just get them back to me. We process it internally if it works out, you know, if everything goes smoothly. Internally, that is a much quicker process. And then we give you the go. So that's really important because everybody likes to get excited, but we have to say you've been approved through everything because there's counter signing and things like that. But I think that was my last slide.
Yes.
Yes. Any questions? always available. You guys have my business cards,
Yes.
but feel free if anybody has,
That's
you
great
know,
lighting.
if there's any, middle of the night, shoot me an email and I'll get back to you.
All right,
Okay.
thank you very much for
No,
that.
no problem.
So we'll be bringing the additional information at the next meeting. So for this, we just wanted to take advantage of the availability for them to come and do this initial presentation. And much like the lighting project, we'll be bringing that forward because obviously the project itself has to be approved by the board. But we wanted to take advantage and talk about the funding availability, the opportunity that we have with PG&E. But if you have any quick questions or anything about the project, I can have Kishan answer that, and then we'll do a bigger discussion at the next meeting.
So for the delta, for the projects not covered by the project, will
Yes.
there be an ongoing cost to SAM?
There will be, but we have another opportunity for some financing that will also assist with that. That is, I believe, also a zero interest loan opportunity. So for the majority of it, there's no cost in the sense of SAM can stretch that out over that period, see the benefit of it, improve both the energy efficiency as well as hopefully the process that we use. We will gain some efficiencies there. And while there's a cost to it, it's spread out at no interest. So it really gives Sam an opportunity to do a project now that needs to be done, benefits that sustainability model that we've talked about, how do we improve so that we are addressing those issues? And in the end, it doesn't cost us, actually it costs us less if you look at the time value of money in doing the project now as opposed to waiting 5 years and then how much more it might be then, as well as we may not have access to some of these dollars if we were to wait 5 years for it. But if you have any questions about the project itself, the blower project, Kishan could answer a few questions on that.
Any more questions?
Okay.
I want to thank staff for finding this
Yes.
and for acting on it and bringing it forward. I'm really excited. I think, I have one concern. And that's when these things wear out and we look back and we say, but it only cost that much. We need to remember that we got a real good deal on it.
Well, don't worry, the depreciation will reflect the true value of the cost of the equipment. Even
Okay.
though the funding came from somewhere else, when we start depreciating it, it's gonna be the $410,000 cost.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Moving on to 4B. Authorize the general manager to amend the contract with Edgecombe Law Group LLP for legal services to increase the authorized amount by $100,000 for a total contract amount not to exceed $200,000.
And I have to apologize, I had gotten a request from Director Ruddick, and we had the auditors in the office today, so I kinda got sidetracked with trying to get them what they needed. I was gonna make copies of the invoices that we've received. Yes, it has, we've gone through this fairly quickly, but part of that was a lot of the work that needed to be done had to be done on the front end. And we knew that. And we can go into greater detail on that in closed session so that Carl can give you some information on that. But we already knew that the majority of this work was going to be on the front side of this work.
Okay,
So-
yeah, I've been concerned about the fact that they were burning through the money at about 25 grand a month. And so I'd asked, I'd like some backup so I can understand sort of the workflow and where the costs were.
Yes.
In terms of effort.
It's winding down.
Well, we'll go into more detail on that in closed session, because obviously it's still an ongoing lawsuit, but Carl can give some more input on that.
Can we approve this as part of the budget amendment? Yes.
Yes, we did put some additional costs into the budget for this year, and then also in the proposed budget for next year, we have additional, because obviously, depending on how this goes, we don't anticipate it being completely done by June 30.
Yeah, so I'm just asking for more information to
Yes.
understand.
Yes.
Or
And
the burn rate.
I believe there is an invoice in the checks that are up for signature, so we can certainly take a look, and that would give you a general idea, at least for this month's invoices. So at this point, what we had set, I don't know if you remember, excuse me, the discussion, but we had originally set it on the 100,000 because we wanted to kind of see how this was going. And so obviously, it's moving along, which is good because that means we're addressing the issues. But obviously, we will have exceeded the 100,000. So we need to continue to utilize them for this work. And so we need to expand the contract, extend it so that it's for 200,000 to give us the ability to continue.
Do they provide sort of a status report with their billings, like a report on progress made or tasks undertaken, that kind of thing?
Yes, much the same as we get with the general counsel. We get the same type of output, and it would be attached to the checks for signature. So yes.
Right, and we've been seeing the work product going to the court or to the other parties as well, so.
Yes.
It'd be nice for us to be able to just understand that.
Yes.
Not just a dollar amount, but.
Right, and obviously that's something that we can, like I said, we can go into greater detail.
Sure, thanks.
And we don't need to approve this tonight.
Yes, we do need to approve this because we need to continue to pay their invoices.
I'll show you the invoice in a second. Harvey's digging it up.
So then you can at least see this payments.
Well, to date, they've billed 100,000,
Yes.
so we're assuming that will double.
I don't wanna presume, exactly how it's gonna go, and once again, to give you greater detail on the lawsuit itself, we have to do that, obviously, in closed session, but this 200,000 doesn't end June 30, this is just for the contract itself, so I'm looking at, hopefully to the end of this, it being that. I don't know what the timing of that might be.
Yeah, I was just concerned because when I saw when the contract was inked, it was like late November. So here we are,
Yes.
burned through 100, that's all, yeah.
And
And I
a
know
lot
these
of
things
the-
are expensive.
Yeah,
so-
well, and a lot of the filings were due, just recently, they were, a lot of it, so obviously there's a lot
That's
of,
the front end, yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and so when you're talking about getting them up to speed, this is a firm that hasn't worked with us, so that there was a lot of, historical information that needed to be built into that.
Well, this is great, what's the
Yes,
catch?
we
Yeah.
get those every
Okay.
month,
Yeah, that's I think a typical level of detail.
yeah.
Thank you for that.
So at this
And
point,
this is a not to exceed in any
Yes.
event, so we're not promising.
to spend it, no, we're hoping we don't, but,
Right, this doesn't do anything to the budget itself for this fiscal year, which
Right. Current
wouldn't
fiscal year.
contemplate this amount of funding being spent this rest of this fiscal
Yeah.
year.
right.
Well, as much as I don't like it, I also don't like feeling exposed.
Absolutely. Exposure costs money.
Yes. And often more than you thought. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you, Debbie.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
And that takes us to 4C, adopt a resolution establishing an irrevocable trust agreement for pre-funding post-employment benefits, Deb, obligations to be administered by Public Agency Retirement Services, PARS, with U.S. Bank as trustee, Highmark Capital Management as the investment sub-advisor, and authorizing the general manager to negotiate, execute, and administer documents to implement the program.
And all of that was to make sure it was very transparent who all the various entities are that are involved in this process. And as part of the consent agenda, you had the actuarial valuation report, which we're required to do every 2 years. So this was the most recent one. That helps establish how much SAM is obligated to set aside for its post-employment benefits, which for SAM, it's retiree medical. And so every 2 years, we have the actuaries come in and they do this valuation, just like we have them do it every year for the retirement. We're required to do that every year for the retirement. So back in 2009, the previous GASB required, as of no later than fiscal year ending 2009, that any entity that had post-employment benefits to establish some form of funding it. SAM has never done that. I have tried for the last couple of years to do so. Unfortunately, we've had some unusual years with some expensive emergency projects that really took precedence. For this year, especially recognizing the, excuse me, the commentary from the auditor in the past two audits, it's imperative that we address this. It used to be just a footnote under the newest GASB pronouncement. It is now booking it as a liability, which means our financial status, our position gets worse. Our net position will continue to get worse until we start addressing this. So it was imperative that we get this going. I had been talking to PARS for some time and then asking them to hold on and wait, and so now we are finally there. There really are only two mechanisms for doing this at this time that are acceptable. CalPERS has one, PARS has the other. In my experience, PARS has had better returns. They have also given more opportunities as far as the level of investment. When they first started out, I think they had 3, now they've got 5. PERS had 1. I think they've now expanded it to maybe 2 or 3. So I have found that PARS is an easier process to deal with because PERS, you kind of get lost in the giant animal that is CalPERS as a state agency. I've included all of the information in here. We talked about this at the Finance Committee, and certainly the representatives from the Finance Committee can talk about what their opinion on it. But the recommendation from staff, as you see in here, was to use the PARS mechanism and as well as to use the moderately conservative investment approach. Sam's got to make up some of that investment because we should have been doing it back in 2009. So we've got a few years. We can talk about that going not into this coming budget, but into the next budget we can take a look at that and see if there's something that we might want to do to speed that up. But there's some money already in the 2019 and 20 budget that was proposed just to meet the minimum requirement. And then we can talk going forward if we want to redirect additional resources to get caught up. But in the meantime, we need to be at least contributing a minimum amount.
And what is that amount?
I've put in about $25,000. SAM doesn't have a huge OPEB year-to-year requirement, but when you're talking about 10 years in arrears and no investments during that time, because
Well, the current liability is $433,000, yes.
and of course, had we been investing even a small amount and then earning interest on it, we would have been making some headway, and very few agencies are 100% funded, I will tell you that, even if they have been doing it since 2009. It's, even for small agencies, this doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you when you look at percentage of budget, it would be difficult to, unless you came into some sort of windfall or one-time funding, it would be difficult to build that into your regular budget. The goal is at some point, you're actually paying the annual benefits that you need to pay off of the interest alone. I mean, as with any trust, you don't want to dip into the principal, you want to be earning interest that covers your your annual contribution amount. That will take Sam some time to get to that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
So, I noticed the fee structure, which is gonna slow it down even more. 35% for one and 25% for the other.
And that comes out of the fees. So yes, you're right.
mean,
Out
the
of the
fees would-
interest.
I'm
Out of
sorry,
the-
out of the interest. The fees come out of the interest, that is correct.
Mhm.
I will say,
25% of what?
Of the interest
Of
earned.
the assets, it's 35% of the assets held, that's what the.
Of the interest earned on the assets.
yes, not the assets themselves, no, that would be huge. You're only
losing
earning
money then.
7%, yes. I'm sorry, that's lots of attachments. And I did put in the moderately conservative approach, so you could see that. I can have the representative come in and meet with the finance committees to go into greater detail. Usually when you start having actuaries talk and people, their eyes roll up in the back of their head and it's a fairly in-depth conversation. I can tell you that it's not, it's off the interest, it's not off the,
Okay.
yeah. And so
Still a lot of money.
it's money. However, if you look at the annual returns, obviously during that time period, if you look at the economy, you can see where the performance. What you're looking for is something that is greater than the increase of your need. So, for example, PERS continues to reduce its expectations for earnings because what they're seeing earned is not matching what they were saying their expectation was. In my experience in using PARS in the past is that they've come pretty close to their benchmark. So if your benchmark is 7%, they've, maybe year to year they have not, but this is a long-term approach. This, it's gonna be great one year, maybe not so great the next year, but over the entire life of that trust, they've managed to reach their expectations even with the fees and everything else and the activity that's taken place.
So, what about CalPERS? What were the fees there? I'm guessing
Do
they're
not-
probably,
They're very similar.
Yeah.
They're very similar. I don't have their most recent fee structure, but I do know when I've done comparisons in the past, they've been very similar. Like I said, the problem I have found with going through CalPERS as a small agency is, I don't mean to be rude, but they don't care. And it's funny because when I go to conferences and they're there, they're always trying to sell me, we outperform, and it's like, actually, no, you
well,
haven't
they
been outperforming.
have serious problems right now with their management, I think.
Yeah, that's another reason where I'm not feeling, warm and
So we really
swishy.
have a choice of
Two.
2 places. And
Those
this
are the
is-
only
this is
two
the
that
better
are-
one, which
Yeah, no, I agree, I
is
just
a
wanted
better
to comment
selection for
again,
us.
for,
They give you a better selection, they're used to dealing with agencies of all sizes, as opposed to CalPERS, which is primarily focused on the state, and then anybody else can kind of join in, but when they make decisions, they're making it for the statewide benefit, which may or may not benefit every single agency. PARS really does work with you for whoever you are. So the personal approach that you get with PARS, I find to be specifically beneficial for smaller agencies because you don't usually have in-house experts in this kind of investment and financing. And because of their partnerships with Highmark, because of their partnership with US Bank, they really do help you maneuver through the process. CalPERS, sometimes it feels like you're a bit on your own with trying to figure it out. So that's why I recommend
And let
PARS.
me say, I went
Excuse me.
through this, I drug MWSD through it for about 2 months because I was very upset with having read these documents, looking at the projected interest rates and costs. And the vote finally came down to a 4-to-1 vote because I was still unhappy.
Yeah,
but
the industry in
it's-
general is collecting a lot of fees. you
There's
know?
not much, but it is 1/4%, not 25%.
Yes.
So and it is, you are correct, it is, so it comes out of the interest in that you're making more than 1/4%
Yes.
on interest, but it is calculated on the
The full
balance,
value,
the full
right.
value.
But it's,
But that said, I can tell you, I looked at all kinds of different financial agreements and structures and opportunities, and this ultimately is the most secure, and
Yeah.
that's what we're paying for, is a level of security.
right, and so if you're looking at 0.25 or 0.35% and you look at the annual excuse me, and you're looking at the annual returns, there aren't any, well, one year, 2015, if you look at the index plus, there are a handful of, like 2008, 2018, it didn't meet its goals, right? It was a negative, and that reflects the economy. But at no other point were you anywhere near the point where you, if you looked at the long term, where you lost money on the, when you look at the fees, right? They were exceeding the fees, so the interest part of it, you still made money.
Which
There were
if
a
we-
couple years where
If
no.
we don't invest and start this fund, we are going to be losing money.
I'm totally in
and we're gonna
Right.
support of doing the fund.
So just for full disclosure, yes, there have been some years where this moderately conservative, and you can go with more conservative, and you're probably gonna lose less, but it's going to take us that much longer to sort of make up the 10 years that we should have been investing it and haven't been investing it. So,
Can we, and I'm guessing that we can change our strategy from year to year, like, maybe we could start out moderately conservative
yes,
or
and
even
see,
less
yes.
moderate, less conservative initially,
yes,
so we can
Yes.
revisit it annually.
All I
We
can
could
say is
revisit it,
remember
yes.
Orange County.
Yes.
and one thing you wanna remember is that this is a long-term solution. So it's not something you wanna move your money around in all the time, because obviously if you're chasing the market, then, you know, it's very difficult to see your long-term success, because if you're constantly changing. Having managed one for a significant number of the years at my previous agency, like I said, this one we were aiming for about 7%, and there were years that did not make that, but overall, when I left, we were at about 9.25% that we had made over that period of time. So, while yes, there were some great years,
4%, yes.
yeah,
Right.
yes.
I guess I'm just wondering whether it pays right now, things are still relatively rosy, to be a little less conservative.
But that could change tomorrow, and then you could say, why did we do that? I mean, you're always, that's why I recommend the moderately conservative, because,
As opposed to super conservative, yeah.
right, and as to too aggressive, because we don't have a lot of money to invest right now. If we got to a point where we had maybe some one-time funds, we might be able to look at that and say, okay, what would we wanna do with that particular decision?
How calibrated is the range? That is it horribly conservative? You know, really conservative.
Like all bonds.
Moderately conservative.
Well, if
Kind
you
of
look,
conservative.
yeah, if you look at the top,
Bone chilling.
I
If
think
you look at the
moderately
top-
conservative seems reasonable to me, and I
Yeah.
completely support doing it,
Well, and
and
then
it
we-
is in our budget.
Yeah,
If
we've
you look at-
recommended that, I'm
you
standing
look
by
at
it.
our
I'm just
page
curious about, you know,
89, look at our page 89, which is the moderately conservative. You, in the top right corner of that page, you can see the different, you've got conservative, moderately conservative, moderate, balanced capital appreciation. So
Okay,
those
thank
are the options.
I thought
You
it
can
was
see-
probably a reasonable number, but I was just curious.
Yeah,
I missed
so
that on
that's-
the-
that's
Which
sort
page,
of the-
89?
89.
89,
Okay.
yes.
89, and yeah.
It's the one that has the
I see it,
diversified
yes.
portfolio. So those are the options. I think because SAM as a whole has tended to be fairly conservative, and we don't really have a lot of experience in investments, in the sense that we put it in LAIF, and that's typically what we've done. I think going with a moderately conservative, at least for now, would give everyone some comfort until they could, because not every one of the member agencies is familiar with doing this. And I just think that, I wouldn't want,
So it's 5.
it to be, yeah,
It's a
there's
range of
5 right
5.
now.
And so we're
I
good.
wouldn't want anyone to second guess, and so we should, I think it would be best for Sam to start out in this moderately conservative and just see how it goes.
I
And
agree
then
with that.
we could reevaluate, like you said, at some point going forward. But to get us started and to at least demonstrate that we recognize this is something we need to deal with.
Absolutely.
At least starting somewhere is better than starting nowhere,
I totally agree.
yes.
Move approved.
Second.
Good, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. 4E, authorize the general manager, no, I'm sorry, D. Discuss proposed language for the proposed non-domestic waste source control program. We need a good acronym for that.
NDWSCP.
Yeah, let's pronounce that. And authorize the general manager to schedule and post a notice of public hearing on the proposed changes to the ordinance and adoption of the fee schedule for fiscal year 2019-2020.
For those of you who might recall, I attempted to do this back in 2016 when I realized just how antiquated the language was. There have been several significant changes in this portion of the environmental compliance that we have to do as part of our permit. The current ordinance dates back to 2001, so fairly significant body of time and changes have occurred. And so, given that we had many things occurring in there, including our new permit that we needed to work with, we put this off until this year. But we really need to address it. I can tell you that we utilized the services of the same consulting firm that helps us with our permit compliance and the new permit language with this, because obviously this is a level of technical expertise that almost every agency, unless you're very large and have the, like East Bay Mud or someone who might have that ability to have an expert in-house, almost everybody contracts this out. I will say that I went over it repeatedly and worked with the consultant. Once we got it to a point where we felt that it addressed all of our concerns as far as matching it with current regulatory requirements in our permit, then I handed it over to the lawyer to then beat it up. And I know he spoke several times and went back and forth with the consultant to make sure that he was clear and comfortable with what this was saying. So it went through several iterations to make sure that it was saying what it should say. And then the other part of it is to identify that we're going to, by resolution each year, adopt a universal fee structure so that we don't have to keep doing ordinance updates, which is how it was being done in the past. It's just not very effective and efficient to go through this process when we can utilize something like a CPI or some other escalator to update, so that we don't have to go through this very lengthy process. And it's something that people can just go, oh, okay, the CPI was X, so I already know this is gonna affect the fees this way.
Right, and that language went through a lot of iterations,
Yes.
back and forth.
What's
There
the
was-
starting point? Yes.
Yeah.
So we have that, but because this would be a fairly significant ordinance change, we do have to go through the official ordinance process to do that. And so that's what we're wanting to do, is to start that ordinance process.
So, the only thing that stood out to me was the language about, it appeared to be adding agricultural operations.
That was my question as well,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, so I just wanna understand what that means.
Well, one of the things, what I had in mind
Excuse me.
was the possibility of grow houses.
Mhm.
And feeding the wastewater from that into the sewer, if there are pesticides or herbicides used, that could impact the digester. So that's exactly what I was thinking
Mm-hmm.
about. We have one agricultural user now, the Rocket Farms.
Yes.
I don't know anything about their discharge, except that I know that's the only entry point into the SAM system by anybody other than member agencies.
If Leonard were here, he could tell you all about it.
I'm sure he
I
could.
can't.
About
I
Rocket
can't.
Farms.
Not Rocket Farms.
But the reason why.
But that's what I had in
We have a
mind.
separate
That's what I
permit
thought, I just wanted to confirm that.
for
But-
their, they do a recycled water process, and that discharges directly into, the SAM, it doesn't go through GCSDs, that's separate. And so we have an agreement that spells that out, we have a separate agreement for leachate.
Right.
If we were to have some other type of industrial, let's say there was a lab company that wanted to come over here and they wanted to discharge, we would have to issue some sort of industrial permit, because more than likely they would, like you said, they might have something that they're discharging that our system, it could affect our system. We typically over here don't see anything like that, but there's the possibility of it, and so we would
Well,
want to be able to control that or enforce. Clearly, we want to be able to inspect it and be able to enforce it if there's something they're discharging that's going to upset our process or violate our permit.
Well, we know that there is an application at the end of Frenchman's Creek Road for a fairly large,
Right.
60,000 square feet cannabis operation, which seems to me like the most imminent sort of
Yes,
change in the
yes.
flow regime.
And this would give us the language to be able to deal with that, whereas before, because the language was so antiquated, those kinds of things were not envisioned. Most agencies have been updating their NDWSCP language throughout the years, and there were about 5 or so years ago, there was a fairly significant change that everybody went through, but we didn't. And so we're playing catch up with some of that language. This addresses that. Obviously, for us, something like cannabis or even just a facility like Rocket Farms that's wanting to do recycled water and then discharge that into
Right.
our system, even if it was through the member agencies system and it wasn't directly into SAM, so it was part of your we would still see the impact of it, and we would still have to be able to address that. So this gives us the ability to do that, should it happen.
Makes sense to me.
So, but the way I read this, agricultural is not included. And so they would have a separate permit like you do with Rocket Farms, or, I mean, I'm looking at page 100. And as currently worded, this would exclude Rocket Farms and any other direct to SAM discharging. So is the implication that that would mean that they needed to do a separate permit?
Well,
Or they would be included in this?
it depends on where they're discharging. Part of it is if they're discharging directly into SAM,
But what does this agreement say? Does it say?
This is talking about agricultural activities discharging wastewater into a building sewer. So this would be an internal grow house that's putting the tailwater, if you will, into the sewer system through, and a building sewer by definition it goes into one of the member agency systems. It's
Okay.
like a sewer lateral essentially. And this is, this makes them subject to, that may be designated, it includes agricultural activities. If they go into the sewer system, then they can be subject to, treated as a category of concern. We would be concerned, and we'd want, rightfully so, if herbicides or pesticides were to go into the member agency sewer. So that's what the language on 100 is.
or
Salt
anything
is-
that
yeah,
upsets our
absolutely.
process.
As I recall,
Yeah.
during the recycled water discussion, we had a salt monitoring program.
Yeah.
And it turned out Rocket Farms, because
the
of the
hot spot.
recycled water, was a hot spot.
The
Yeah.
brine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so what this does is, because we don't permit the building sewers, those go through the member agencies. What we're saying is this still gives us the ability to identify it as a source. And then obviously we have to work with the member agencies because it's not something that SAM directly has control over.
So this still gives enough flexibility to make sure that that kind of operation is operating in
That is my
an environmentally
understanding of this
sensitive way,
language.
appropriate with
That's-
this
yeah.
permit.
Yes.
That's the idea,
Without
this-
saying, oh, if you're agricultural,
Right.
sorry.
Right,
Cause there's one
I wasn't
that's.
sure what this was saying.
Yeah, there's one that's, if you're directly discharging into SAM, because then SAM has the ability to issue a permit like we do with leachate rocket farms. The other is if you're discharging into an upstream place, it's still ending up in our plant, we still have to be able to manage that.
Right.
And so it's dealing with it in two places.
right, and this sort of derives from the Clean Water Act regulations, the pre-treatment standards, that's what at the beginning of section 1.2, that's what we're sort of looking at. And that's where you have a situation where somebody is generating something that's either exceptionally strong, or it might be a lot of loading, a lot of quantity. And it typically is an industrial type operation.
Yes.
But if you could have, for example, a grow house that would have similar impacts, I suppose. I mean, that's what we're getting at, just in case. Want to
Okay,
make
so
sure
this
we've
gives
got
us the
an eye.
flexibility to
Yes.
deal with those
Yeah.
without
Yes.
eliminating the ability to work with them to make sure they're being
Correct.
operated in an environmentally sensitive way.
Right,
Right,
and we
right,
don't
and-
want to
right.
not work with them, we just want to have the authority, and part of it is letting, at least as far as our permit's concerned, saying this is the limit to our permit. If you're doing something that's affecting that, then obviously we should have the right to then go and say, okay, what do we need to do? So, and obviously we wanna make sure that everything is consistent with our permit, but then there's also the component on the inspections, and I really wanna highlight this because there have been for some time, misunderstandings about the NDWSCP program as it relates to fog. Fog is not a SAM issue.
Fats, oils, and grease.
Right.
That's for the
Yes.
TV audience.
That's oils and grease, yes, and things that are sticky and icky and get caught in the collection system, gets caught in tree roots, offsets, and then of course, those can build up and eventually end up as those lovely pictures of fat birds and other things.
It should be
that are-
fats, oils, grease,
And
and
rags.
wipes
And
and
wipes,
rags.
yeah. But those acronyms aren't nearly as fun as fog.
Right.
Yeah, fogger,
But for the
fogwa.
public,
Yeah.
those things don't dissolve.
If
Right.
it's not the 3 Ps,
Right,
then you don't flush it or put it down the drain.
doesn't belong in the toilet.
Exactly. So when Sam is doing our inspections of restaurants and the auto mechanics and things like that, we're looking for fats, oils, and greases. We're looking for things that are going to coagulate in the system and making sure that they stop that, like your arteries. You don't eat the cheeseburger, it ends up badly, right?
There was one in the city of London that apparently was the size of what,
A
like
bus, the double-decker bus.
a double-decker bus.
Yes. But those, yeah, I know, it's lovely.
Fat bird.
Those, however, Sam's system actually likes fats, oils, and greases because of the biological process. In fact, some places like East Bay Mud will actually take oils from food, like the restaurants and stuff, because it actually is part of the biological process. Your collection systems do not like them. So that is actually part of your collection system.
So it's a collection system issue, not
A
a
SAM.
processing treatment
Right,
issue.
right.
Right.
Except for the wipes
Except
and the
for the
fibers.
Right,
Right.
those get caught, but those get caught in your collection system typically along the way as well. But there's been a misunderstanding, and that's why this NDWSCP program, they were doing the ordinance and they were calculating fees and they were charging them to the restaurants and they were using it based on flow like it was an annual permit. That's not what it's supposed to be. What it's supposed to be is the cost of performing the inspection. That's all it's supposed to do. It's supposed to capture the cost of doing the inspection. Now, SAM typically, in its own permit and its sewer system management plan, we don't do fog inspections. That's something we do on behalf of the member agencies. We don't do them for Half Moon Bay anymore because Half Moon Bay uses Mark Thomas to do those. But if we were to do it, we'd be doing it through our contract services. It's not a SAM function. But there are some things that are SAM functions. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a fee schedule that would address those for the things we do have to do. And so even though we've got them on here, I wanna make it clear, SAM itself doesn't do food service establishment inspections, but if for some reason there was an establishment that went directly into a SAM line, like Rocket Farms does, we would have to do an inspection, because it would be in our system, especially if it's in the gravity section. Dental facilities, those do fall under SAM because you're talking about heavy metals. Those are part of SAM's process, we have to keep them out of our process. Permitted industrial user, that's where we get to something like pesticides and herbicides, if they were discharging directly into SAM. We would wanna do inspections. So what we're doing is we're saying, if we were to go and inspect one of these sites, we believe this is going to capture the cost of that inspection. So that's what these are doing. It's not based on flow, because flow has nothing to do with it. You can have a restaurant in this corner and a restaurant on that corner, and we have to inspect both of them. It generally takes the same amount of time, and it doesn't have anything to do with how much water gets sent into the system.
Yep.
It has to do with the hours it takes to do the inspection.
No, go ahead. How does the inspection determine whether they are putting undesired materials into the system? I would think that would be more testing than inspecting.
Well, generally fats, oils, and greases, especially with restaurants, they're actually looking for a piece of equipment that they're supposed to have.
Every restaurant has what's
Right.
called a grease trap, and it
Yes.
has to be,
So you're checking the grease
cleaned
trap.
and,
Okay.
and.
Are they
whatever.
managing it to keep
Now.
the, yes,
Many don't,
yes.
and that's where the problem comes in.
Right, and so now with the dental, it's an amalgam process, and so you actually have to be certified for SAM to do the inspections. We have several staff that are actually, they have gone through the process in our.
So they're testing or they're
No, they're
again,
inspecting.
checking their process?
Do you have one? Are you cleaning it? Are you using it properly? Are you disposing, and when you're disposing of it, are you
equipment
disposing of it properly and not just dumping it somewhere that it doesn't belong, that's getting back into the system?
So they, at a dental office, they have a specific piece of equipment that
Separates out,
makes all the water that leaves the office.
so that it doesn't have things like mercury in it and other heavy metals, yes. And then, of course, at the restaurants and other places where fats, oils, and greases are involved,
Yeah, that's.
they're supposed to be doing that. As far as industrial users, they may have sampling, which is why they have a sampling fee. Because if we're trying to determine if they are discharging something into our system, for example, if we were looking at a brine or something where we would wanna look at the salinity, we would have to do a special test that we would have to send out and get it tested, and there's a cost to that. And the regular ratepayers should not have to have the burden of that. So that's what this is for. And then, the temporary discharge, that would be, for example, if somebody wanted to come and discharge one time, like why am I drawing a blank on the name of the pumping company?
American Portable Septic
Yes,
System.
yeah, somebody with a septic system or the little blue houses, and they wanted to come and,
Everybody.
yeah, they wanted to come and discharge.
Houses.
We would have to have something to charge them. And so we have to have an established fee. And then finally, because we had this conversation a few months ago about what if somebody called and asked us for assistance? In the past, we just did a general, sure, we'll come help, no charge, state parks, no charge, harbor district. And the board said that for fairness, because, the collection system is, the member agencies own those, and SAM in and of itself doesn't have that process, we should establish a fee for that. So if somebody called and said, we need you to come help us pump out the state park's bathroom because it's backed up and you guys can get here faster than the plumber can and it's spilling, we needed to establish a fee.
Mhm.
So that's what this fee would be.
Absolutely.
And so I said that I wouldn't bring that back again until we could establish a fee. So here would be the fee, should somebody call us and say, we need to be able to do this. And I just realized this has a typo. I will fix that. It was supposed to have outside of Monday through Friday, and I realized somehow that got dropped off. So I will make sure that that's fixed before we post for it. But basically, it's double that.
So I'd like to move that we authorize the general manager to schedule and post a notice of a public hearing on the proposed changes to the ordinance and adoption, a resolution establishing the uniform fee schedule for fiscal year 2019-20.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
We
Abstention?
have a comment from the audience?
I guess could I just ask something?
Oh, please.
I guess one is that, no issue with, particularly with the acknowledgement that we've taken fog on. One of the questions is, I think, is this, we had no backup to understand how we came to these fee, points, and I think that would be helpful for everybody to get between now and then. Back to your issue of private lateral assistance, one of the things that came about is also the liability issues. And I guess the question is that $200 per hour include your cost for liability insurance? And does it include also the use of the truck that was purchased by all three agencies at a one-third cost? So I think these are some things to assume and consider whether those fees are actually capturing the cost for the truck and the
It's
vehicle
fully
and
loaded.
the liability. Okay,
It's fully loaded.
all right, let's
And
talk
just so
about
you
it.
know, it's a derivative of the cost of the man time,
Okay.
or person time is the case maybe.
Thank you.
So I'm
Sorry.
guessing that these sorts of fees are not held to the same standard as like city fees, where we have to do a nexus study and.
No, these are directly related, and that's why they're supposed to be related to the cost of doing it. So in other words, in the case of collection system, it's usually a two-person response in the truck. There's usually some water costs, there's some fuel costs to get there, all the liability and everything else. So basically, how much does it take? It would include any overhead, so for example, to invoice them and process that, all of that gets calculated into it, and that's what it is. It's generally how much does it cost fully loaded for an hour for our truck to roll.
Yeah, essentially the cost of providing service.
Yeah, directly related, and that's something that, as long as it is a derivative of the cost alone, can't make a profit on it, it can't cover other things that are unrelated.
As long as we have that backup someplace, so.
And you know where it's real easy to find it? You can look at the RFP response from Sam to Half Moon Bay, because we had to do a derivative of the man hours to do that as well. So if you look at it, it's very similar, obviously just updated for the newest information.
Okay, good,
I'd like
let's
to
move
just
on.
point out, Madam Chair, it's 8:15 and we still have quite a few items here.
Yes,
Yeah, so, okay.
let's all talk faster.
Did you get who?
Agenda item 4E, authorize general manager to execute a contract with City Mechanical to replace rooftop HVAC unit in an amount not to exceed $17,735.
So I will,
So moved.
have this go,
Second.
oh,
I have a question before we do that.
I didn't hear who made the motion and,
It was
Ruddick and
Ruddick
I?
and I.
okay.
I have a
Ruddick and
question,
I.
and that is the HVAC unit, it's probably the biggest problem with it is rust.
Correct.
The new unit is going to have corrosion resistance of some sort.
So to make the bids comparable, I took what they did like, so that it was like for like for like, when I
Right.
came up with this. There are things that they offered as adders, which were specific coatings they could put
Yes.
on there. But those were all adders in everyone's, so if I was to replace in kind, this would be to replace in kind. If you want me to do the adders, then I would have to,
That would be my preference.
Yeah.
My business had HVAC and, the original contractor put in the cheapest and we
Yep.
put in the adders
mhm,
and doubled the life, or not double the cost.
So let's continue it then.
So please, let's continue that. Thank
Okay.
you.
We will do that. We will bring that back at the May meeting.
Adopt a 5-year capital improvement plan for 2019-2023. That's item 4F. Now, the question I have is that on here? Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It should be quick, but Kishan felt that for those who may not have been here when we went through this originally, it would be great to just do a refresher on it to remind everyone else and to
I think
present.
that's a great plan. I think the
Yep.
public appreciates it, and
Yep.
Keisha, thank you, that's very, very much in the mode of transparency.
Yes. And this has been discussed and reviewed and discussed and reviewed, so this is just the bow on it to tie it up for this coming fiscal year's budget.
So the 5-year CIP plan is in your packet, and the way the 5-year plan was drafted was after discussion with member agency managers. We had a couple of meetings, and in the meetings, managers indicated that the maximum annual budget should not exceed more than 2.5 million. And it was indicated that out of the 2.5 million annually, and out of the 2.5 million set aside every year, we should set aside 1.5 million mainly for the force main repair projects, and the balance 1.5 million, 1 million could be used for plant equipment or any other equipment related work. So with that, we drafted the 5-year CIP, which is in your packet, which averages out about 2.5 million every year. Now the focus is primarily to walk you through the present 1920 CIP plan. So this presentation is going to cover only the 1920 CIP plan. It will cover the projects which are being proposed for the next financial year. So the first project is the assessment of Princeton force main. As you're aware, the force main was built in 1980. It has a length of about 4,100 feet. The material is ductile iron, and we have set aside an amount of $100,000. This is primarily for doing the ultrasonic testing of the pipe to determine the wall thickness, to find out how much it has deteriorated, and to determine if the force main needs to be replaced. So after the assessment, then Sam will decide how many segments or what segments need to be brought to the following year. So the ultrasonic testing is basically the force main is excavated and exposed, and then the metal thickness is measured using ultrasound. These results are compared against the manufacturer's specifications. For example, if the original thickness was say 20 millimeters, then we find out how much it has degraded. If you've determined by ultrasound that it has come down to 16 mm, then we have the table and we determine whether it is degraded, whether we need to replace it. So the metal loss and the interior deterioration is then determined. The second project is the Montero force main design. Now during the meetings with the member agency managers, it was determined that for the Princeton force main, we will do only the assessment this year, and we will actually do the design and construction in the following years. While for the Montero force main, or rather the force main in the Montero area, we would do the design and construction this year, and they were not in favor of doing the assessment of the force main, because they felt that it would be better if we can utilize that money for the design rather than using it for assessment. So based on that,
Is this the IPS?
pardon me?
This is the IPS?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but the Princeton force main is not. Princeton is the one that goes from the Princeton pump station up to the IPS, correct?
It would still be.
It would still
Still be IPS?
be the IPS.
Okay, but, alright.
It's
So
still
this
that.
is the one that we've had all the problems with and that need, I think,
No,
No.
this is no problems. Coming downstream of Portola pump station is the force main which we replaced last year,
right,
which is in the Granada area. Those had problems of brakes, which we have replaced. But the force main which we are talking of now in the Montero area does not have any problems. The problem areas was in the Valimar area, which we have replaced about 4 years back. so that's already taken care of. So this has no history of any breakage, no recent history of
But
any
this is the
breakage.
Why
same
is it
line that was put in
prioritized?
the same time
Yes.
as the rest of it. So this is the same line and so forth, so, right?
Come again, I didn't get you.
This is the same line.
In other words, it's the same,
Yes.
same
Yeah,
time,
it is the
same
same.
consistency,
Yes.
same
Same
material.
line,
It
same
runs
time.
under the fields.
Right.
So why is it prioritized if it's not having any problem?
Part of that is the analysis that was done with the engineers, and it's also part of the discussion with the regional board that we address it because it is the same age, of the same condition, of the same material.
Yeah, the asset life is about 40 years and is determined that the useful life is about 50 years. We still have about 10 years if everything is.
Right. Perfect.
And
Perfect.
because we don't have a redundant force main, there really isn't an economical way to do an analysis of that entire segment.
So it's proposed to do the design documents for the entire length of 13,950 feet, keep all the design documents ready, the specifications, the bid documents, and the construction cost estimate. And then move on to the next project where we actually take up construction of only a small portion, about 25 to 35% is what we plan on taking up in 1920, which is about, estimated amount is about 950,000. In the 1.5 million which we've set aside for force main work, 950 is for construction, and the earlier what I mentioned, 350 is for the design part.
For the past project, weren't there some major savings by actually doing more together?
Yes,
And
So-
is that still
Yeah.
part of your plan for the future?
yeah, that's the idea in doing the design documents for the entire stage. So when we go out for a bid, we will give different options, like last time when we did option 1, combining a couple of segments or doing 2 segments or 4 segments, so that way last time we were able to do cost savings and we did more than one segment, what is proposed. So that's the idea in doing the design documents also.
Thank you.
When you're doing this construction, will that impede the operation of IPS? Will it?
Yeah, because we do not have any redundant pipeline, so we have to do it just the way we did it for the force main in the Granada region. We'll have to put a bypass and we'll have to put a temporary line.
You'll have to
We
do a
have
bypass.
Right.
We have to do that.
Okay.
And we'll have the same discussion about, do we let it, do we leave it there, do we dig it up? And
Yes.
part of that will be the options, so we can see if there's cost savings one way or the other. Yes.
So the next project is at the Montero pump station where we have conduits which need to be replaced, primarily a safety issue, and these have a constant exposure to salt water mist causing heavy corrosion of these exposed conduits. These conduits basically are power lines as well as data lines, which is communication lines. So in the event that the conduits fail, we would not only lose power, we would lose total communication, because this is like a hub. The pump station is like a hub, and it gets all these signals, information from various lift stations. And this estimated amount is about 120,000. To give you a picture, these are the conduits which are outside the Montero pump station, and you see that the extreme right hand side, you can already see the rust forming on those conduits. The next project is the Princeton pump station bypass system. By means of this, we would be able to cater to emergency operations, in the sense that we would be able to plug in a trash pump if one of the pumps fail or if there's any problem with the pump station, as well as have any routine maintenance if we need to do, then we can use this bypass system. This estimated amount is about 100,000 and primarily involves replacing heavily corroded pig launch valves and appurtenances and installing the necessary valves. So this is how the pig launch system looks like. It's heavily corroded.
Pig launch.
Pig launch valves and appurtenances, it sounds like.
The next,
Go on.
yeah, the next project is at the plant, which is the influent pump. Conduit wiring needs to be replaced. The asset is past the useful life, It is a safety issue, heavily corroded. There is no local control, so which means we would lose control, or we would have to go to the control panel to shut it off if the conduit start failing. And it's important to replace the electrical wiring conduit and provide local control. And you see this portion of the end, the small pipe which is going to the ground, that is heavily corroded. You can actually see those wires coming out. So all those have to be ripped up and changed.
This environment is not kind to a lot of our equipment.
Yeah, so that takes us to the next slide, which is the chemical area where we've installed new pumps. We need to protect this new chemical feed system from rain and ultraviolet light. So the estimated amount is $55,000. We propose to install a shade canopy similar to like a carport or something on top of the chemical area. This is the existing chemical area which is exposed to sun, rain, and the corrosive atmosphere. The next project is a stainless steel heat exchanger and shell. The existing material is carbon steel, heavily corroded, and the estimated amount is about $100,000. We frequently replace the carbon steel heat exchanger and shell because of the corrosive atmosphere, because of the corrosive fluid, and the estimated amount is about $100,000, and this is the heat exchanger, and inside is the shell. The next is the waste activated sludge, which is a rotary drum thickener. We intend to procure a rotary drum thickener by which we can thicken the sludge, increase the digester sludge solids content. This would reduce the sludge hauling and disposal costs, improve our digester gas production, and the estimated amount is $300,000. And we've already demonstrated all these advantages by having a rental machine, and they actually came for trial, and then we have it on rental basis, and we are able to accrue all these benefits. So we'd like to bring it as a permanent one. So this is how the unit looks like. This is on mounted on trailers only because it's for trials. The final product will be just on stick. And then the last project is a combined heat and power system for the digester gas flare, which we discussed a couple of meetings back, where we said it might be worthwhile pursuing this rather than replacing the gas flare. This will be the beneficial use of methane gas resource to reduce the carbon emissions. We're also looking at funding mechanisms like a power purchase agreement and various options in trying to provide a micro turbine. So the scope of work would be to install a combined heat and power system using digester gas. And this is the flare system. So this is the project plan, which is a part of your packet. The first year 1920, which is about 2.5, and these are the projects which I've covered in my presentation. Any questions? I'm ready to answer.
And also what we're looking at is a 5-year plan, but each year we'll be reevaluating the specific projects identified for that coming year. But for planning purposes, we want to have the board approve the whole 5-year plan. And then of course, during the fiscal year 19/20, we will actually bring these projects forward because they exceed my purchasing authority, so obviously we would have to go through each project's process. So this is not assuming that the board is going to do everything and they're approving it now. It's the plan.
We are approving these though.
These are the ones that are identified and in the budget for 2019-20, but as we bring each project forward to you for the authority, we can have a discussion, and it might be that somewhere during the year we had planned on doing X, but maybe something happened, and so we asked permission to swap with maybe something from the following year, maybe something's taken precedence. But as a plan, this is what we're asking for.
I move approval of the 5-year capital improvement plan as presented.
So that was Reddick and Blanchard.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you for that presentation. That
Thank
was
you
really
very
Really
much.
nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the general manager's report.
Well, in the observance of the time and the fact that we still have some closed session items, the report's there if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer, but otherwise, leave it there for you to peruse.
Okay.
We Yeah, I just wanted to say, on the service calls in GCSD, the sewer line that goes across the bridge has nothing flowing through it. So, someone, there's just a note of a service call, about the sewer line and the bridge, and the bridge is,
For clarification, the existing sewer line does not go across the bridge, but the bridge is failing and the temporary lines that GCSD has are in fact connected to the bridge. So if something happens to the bridge, those lines will go into the creek, which is what that was meant to say.
Which
okay.
is a violation of a permit somehow.
Well, it's not ours,
Not
but it
ours.
would not be something we would want to have happen.
right, all right, well, let me go
That-
back and
that's what
check,
the
but
concern
I
was.
checked into this and.
I am happy to take pictures of, because I walk by there all the time, and I assess the bridge every time I go by there during low tide to see how much more of the cliffside is eroding and failing, and how much more of the existing bridge is exposed. I'm actually surprised that it's still open as a walking bridge to
Yeah.
gain access.
So if GCSD were to hire an expert who were to evaluate this, the conclusion of the expert would likely be, you notice how much I'm hinting,
I don't,
that perhaps GCSD would consider removing their pipes.
I know
We
they're
are
working on it,
actually
they're working on it.
actively
Yes.
working on that, that is,
I know
that
they're
is
working
right
on
now
it.
Yes.
the direction we're going.
It's just
However,
every once in
we
a while
have-
someone will call us and we have to respond
No,
because we
I'm,
aren't.
I'm just, I'm saying that, so I wanna make it clear that, you know, we have a bypass in place, so we
Okay.
have no.
Yeah.
I would, let's move on.
Moving on, I just wanted to.
I would like to note for the public that John Zabo, who came to this meeting on March 11th, made some comments. Director Penrose asked for him to put his comments in writing, and they are in writing attached to this agenda as item 5B. Moving on to attorney's report.
I will reserve my remarks for closed session, except I want to mention one thing, that was that I was just asked to take a look at a bill, which is SB 646. And it's not an earth-shattering bill, but it does have the potential, if you read a certain way, to make capacity charges and connection fees subject to Prop 218. So I'm not in favor of that, to put it mildly.
Right.
But that's enough.
Okay, we should follow that. Director's reports? Seeing none. Topics for future board discussion? We're going to move forward bring forward the one for the air conditioning unit from this meeting. Public comment, I see no speaker slips. Any hands? Seeing none. Let's go into recess and convene in closed session.